gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. 2021.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome everyone back to Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Challenge North America, Credo Tri, You Can, Hoka One One, VeloFix, Normatec, Canyon Bikes, and of course our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Right before COVID hit, we sent out 3,921 grants totaling $5.9 million to keep challenged athletes in the game of life through sport. And we talk about legends of Kona. It's a very short list until you get to Mr. Craig Alexander, three-time Ironman World Champion, two-time 70.3 World Champion, and still racing and kicking ass whenever he can. Craig, how you doing?
Hey, Bob, how are you? Geez, I've missed Poncho, man. I can't wait till we get back there this year.
Isn't that, I just love it. I got my Huggos background. I got Poncho Man. I got my Hawaiian shirt. It's like, okay, I'm almost there. I'm getting close.
I can smell the frangipanis. I can smell them.
So you are launching a new triathlon team, a Vespa triathlon team. Talk a little about how this came about, because anything that puts dollars into our athletes' pockets is a great thing.
Yeah. Well, they're launching the team. I'm assisting. So it came about probably six months ago. I was contacted by a guy to coach him, and just through some conversations, one thing led to another, and it became evident he was a high-level executive at Vespa Corporation. And, I guess like you and I, he loves the sport.
Yes.
And he was talking about wanting to get more involved and getting the business involved in the sport. And I love when companies, any company, particularly non-endemics, want to get involved and bring some money, because obviously they see the value that we've seen, what the sport represents and what the athletes represent. So it was a conversation that quickly went off in a lot of different directions. And he asked me if I could help him get involved and get their business involved. And I presented a plan which had different stages, but they liked the idea of getting involved. And so we're rolling out stage one very soon. I'm happy to announce, at Challenge Miami, we'll have our official team launch. And the stage one is mainly event activations. They want to be at all the events. I mean, those of us who have been to some of the major races like Kona know that the best way to get around town is on a motorcycle. So it seems like a great fit to be at the events, and that they want to do a lot of great stuff at the events and activated a lot of the major events like Kona and 70.3 Worlds and Challenge Roth. So that's part of plan one, and also having a professional triathlon team. I mean, our sport has had a lot of pro teams over the years. It's got a good history actually of having teams in sport, and I was a member of Try to Buy 15 years ago. One of the first big teams and the first team out of the Middle East. And I just loved it. I just think the concept is amazing. Even though we race as individuals, a team within our sport can be greater than the sum of the parts. You can be racing all over the world on the same weekend. And so, stage one of the Vespa Pro Triathlon team will roll out in Miami next weekend. And we're looking forward to many more things to come. But I'm excited for the roster to be announced next week. We've got 8 athletes, 4 males, 4 females, and some of the best in the world. So it should be good.
So I'm looking at the list. Can I mention the list, or is that launching out next week?
Well, I think you've got the exclusive, don't you?
I think we do.
Yeah,
and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at Heather Jackson, Lucy Charles, Flora Duffy, Sarah Crowley, Rudy Von Berg, Josh Emberger, and Sam Appleton.
Yeah, that's our team. And Tim Burkle. Tim Burkle's in there as well.
Tim Burkle, I love it.
Yeah, so they came to me with a brief of the kind of athletes who they wanted. Of course, Vespa are a performance brand, right? First and foremost, they're a brand built on, I guess, performance, style, and history. And I guess that's where they see the synergy with triathlon. It's a perfect brand fit with our sport. And above all else, they wanted high-level performing athletes, but they also had some idea of the kind of athletes they wanted representing their brand as well, and other attributes. So we had a list and we went back and forth, and we arrived at that roster. And some exciting news: we're about to add four more athletes, 2 more guys, 2 more girls, which will be announced in a few more months, in about 2 months, I think. So Yeah, they've stepped up big time. They don't just want to come in for this year. It's sort of a multi-year investment that they're planning. They've got their heart set on launching an age group team next year.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're working on currently, and I think that's huge. I mean, the sport is a lot of things. It's a community, and all levels of athletes are involved. And I think all athletes in our sport, whatever level, sort of exemplify all the attributes that Vespa loves. So it makes sense to have an age group team or an amateur team. And they've also asked me if I can help them roll out some training centers at some point, where the athletes, pro and age group alike, can go to train, and anyone really could go to train. So yeah, there's some exciting ideas in the pipeline, but initially our first foray in as a team is this weekend in Miami. And I think initially the plan is just some event activations this year and the pro team. So I'm excited for this weekend in Miami. But yeah, those names you mentioned, man, I mean, I'm excited because we've got some Kona favorites. We've got Flora, who's obviously one of the big favorites for Tokyo. And yeah, so I wanted to bring in a mix of all sorts of athletes who had a good range over different distances and who are consistent. And of course, Vespa, well, they wanted high performance athletes, but they had their sort of heart set on a certain style of athlete as well. So I think we've arrived at a really good team, and I'm super excited for Miami next weekend.
Well, and we'll have from that team who'll be joining us on Breakfast with Bob there. We got Heather Jackson, Lucy Charles, Sarah Crowley, and Rudy Von Berg. So we'll have 4 of your athletes participating there and joining us on the show. So that's gonna be really fun. And what's cool, I love the fact that we're talking performance. The Vespa represents being, something with a motor on it going on the road. And as Challenge North America grows at Daytona and at Miami and at Watkins Glen on racetracks, what could be better, right? That's a great combo with Vespa. I think there's so many cool things they could be doing there, because these things are like festivals. So you're going to have a 5K and a 10K, and you could have a Vespa as a vehicle. I mean, there's so many possibilities. That's what's so cool, bringing something like that in.
Yeah, and it's exciting, and it's just authentic. I know. I mean, I lived in Boulder for a long time, and for 10 of those years, I had a motorcycle. And of course, we had a family vehicle for Neri and the kids, but I would go to training on my motorcycle. Just a great way to get around. So a lot of the athletes in the team were already riding motorcycles as well, particularly those who lived in Boulder and sort of tri-hubs like that. I know Flora's in Stellenbosch, and she's grown up using scooters. Interesting story with her. I mean, coming from Bermuda, every house title is only allowed one vehicle, so they grow up riding motorcycles. And so it's a really authentic relationship, and I just think it brings so many things to the table. And just coming off a year like we've all had, I think we're all very keen just to get back to the races. And I just love when companies, particularly big companies, see what we see who have been involved in the sport a long time. And those of us who know and love the sport, it's just so good to see that replicated and people, I guess, putting their money where their mouth is and really coming in and supporting our great sport.
The other aspect of, think about how many times people are out motor pacing. I mean, the Vespa is the perfect motor pacing. Every Tuesday out here at Fiesta Island, which you've been in, they've got a Vespa in there because to break it up, right? The Vespa pulls some people out, and then everybody goes after them. They start sprinting, and then they regroup. So it's been part of training for forever, right? In terms of triathlon and cycling.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you think of the lifestyle aspect of getting around to training, checking the surf out, going to coffee shops, but it is a big part of a lot of the athletes' training. I mean, anyone who's been to Kona in the week leading up to the race, you go out into the Queen K, it's like a roller derby for motorcycles and people motor pacing. So I know it was a big part of my training in Kona and in Boulder and back home here in Australia as well. So yeah, there's that performance aspect. There's a lot of really nice tie-ins, which is why I think this is a really great partnership.
So the other reason I wanted to chat with you is this is a pretty special anniversary, right? 2021 is 10-year anniversary of probably one of the greatest years in triathlon history. You were the first person to win 70.3 Worlds and Ironman Worlds at the same year, right? That was, and coming off of 2010 when you finished fourth in Kona, and we're not very happy with not winning the thing after winning it 2 years in a row. Talk a little bit about leading into 2011. And people were thinking you were a little older Is he done? He's won it twice. So he's finished fourth. He's finished second. Is Craig done? And then you went on to have the greatest year in your career, I would guess. And you might not look at it that way, but really one of the greatest years in breaking the course record in Kona and winning 70.3 worlds within basically a month of each other.
Yeah, it was a breakthrough year for a lot of reasons for me personally. I mean, I raced with a different strategy in Kona. I think I was second off the bike that year, so I didn't just wait for the marathon. I actually had one of the quicker bike splits, and I think at the time it was in the top 5 or 6 bike splits in the history of the race. So, and look, those times are great, but it's very condition dependent as well. And so I guess there's a lot of qualifying factors there. But for me personally, it was very satisfying. I mean, I guess other people had doubts about whether I could come back at that age. I had doubts because I think you get to a point in your career where you become more civilized and you become content maybe with the things that you've achieved, and maybe you're looking to explore other avenues in life. And I know a lot of people have asked me about Jan this year, and I think with someone like Jan, it comes down to, and with any athlete really at sort of that level and at that age, whether the desire and the motivation's there to do all the things that they know they need to do. I mean, Jan physically is, in my opinion, still the best male Ironman triathlete out there. The question is he motivated? Is he still keen to go out and do the long training hours? And they're more the questions, and they're the questions that I faced, coming up 2010. And they're also the questions that I asked myself. Did I seriously want to put myself through the training again? Had a young family. But I answered the question pretty quickly. I did, with some help of a lot of great mentors and trusted advisors. They said, "Hey man, you're physically still right in your window to perform well, particularly at a race like Kona." I'd always felt that the 70.3 distance was my best distance. I mean, I was more of a speed athlete as a young man, as a soccer player, and I thought I had to work hard on the endurance and the strength side of things. It came together so well in that year. I mean, it was also the first year that they rescheduled the 70.3 worlds before Kona. So it just a lot of things played really nicely into my favor that year, and I was able to get in great shape and put out 2 really great performances within 4 weeks of each other. So it was a great year. I look back fondly. It seems like a long time ago. I can't believe it's been 10 years because it sometimes feels like 20, but other times it feels like yesterday. So great memories. I must say, that I do like going back to Kona and watching this current generation of superstars just tear up and down the Queen K, and triathlon's sort of evolving into so many great things. When I started, it wasn't in the Olympics. It was, and I mean, my history well, I started as a sort of a bit later into the sport. I played soccer, and the sport that I had seen and the race that I had seen was Hawaii. So that's my complete interest, and that became my complete focus. But it's evolved into so many great things now, and I'm really loving watching the transition of a lot of these ITU guys coming up and just really dominating in the longer course races. Of course, we've seen Gustav Iden do that. And just watching a lot of the super young guys coming into the ITU racing at such young ages, but just laying down unbelievable times. One of the things I loved last year during COVID was a lot of these athletes gave themselves personal challenges, whether it were PBs on the track or I'm watching some of the times these kids are doing. They're hitting 19, 20 years of age with just such pedigree and history in the sport already. And the times are just mind blowing. So it's I guess as an elder statesman in the sport now, it's good to look back. I like to look forward as well and see what these current athletes are doing and where the sport, is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years as well.
How far along were power meters and some of the technology that is so huge now during that part of your career?
Heart rate monitors were always sort of in vogue, I guess. I didn't have one. I did get one actually in 2002 when I had the chicken pox and got sick. Right. And I wasn't sure when I'd be able to get back to training. And the doctor who was overseeing my rehab gave me a heart rate monitor and said, "You need to wear this to bed at night. And when you wake up in the morning, just track your resting heart rate, and you will know when it's time to get back to training because it will get back to its normal level." And I didn't know what the normal level was. But every morning I was waking up and it was high. It was in the 70s. And he said that's normal. Your body's fighting an infection. And then one day I just woke up and it was 28 or 29. So I thought I can get back to training. And it sort of did happen that quickly after 5 or 6 weeks of not training. And a high heart rate, a high resting heart rate, it just went down quite quickly and I got back to training. So that was my introduction to heart rate monitors, but I never really trained with one until I got up to altitude in 2000. Well, I got up to altitude in 05, but in 2008, no, 09 actually, I just won Kona the previous year. And I was trying to progress my training a little bit. So I wanted to go up and train at even higher altitudes. So I got a heart rate monitor just to see how I was responding up higher. And it was about that time I got a power meter as well. I started working with a coach called Nick White, who worked under Carmichael Training Systems umbrella. And Nick was an awesome coach for me. I think we had a nice synergy and a nice relationship. And he said, this is stepping up to the Ironman racing. This will really help you, not with your sort of your top end power, but just monitoring your overall training load and making sure your long rides are in the right sort of range and your hard rides are hard enough. So it was about 07, 08, I started with a power meter, and even in my time, the next 5 years of sort of Kona racing, you just saw them develop and get lighter, more accurate. I think my first one was an SRM, and I think it was predominantly they were the only model available. And you saw again the evolution and technology within our sport. People were putting power then into pedals, into cranks. It's just amazing. Now fast forward another decade or more, and it's one of the fun things actually I love about going out to Kona, seeing all the new stuff. And I got access to Bike Fit and a lot of that technology when it first came in. But I just think it's gone next level again. These current professionals are really looking after their bike fit, getting on the velodrome, doing testing. Their equipment choices are right on point. It's all about performance. It's performance driven. And now, I didn't think I would see technology get into running. I thought, with the swimming and the swim skins and the bikes, obviously the aerodynamics, but now we're seeing the carbon plates in the shoes and
run power thing. Yes.
Run power meters. Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense, innovation and technology is everywhere now. It's in every part of our life. And I think you find adaptations to use it in sport as well. So it's good to see the athletes really know how to adapt it and use it to go quicker, because ultimately that's what every athlete's trying to do.
When I look at the times from back in the day compared to now, it really everything's in the bike, right? The difference between a 424 that you rode in 2011 and the 408 that they're doing now, that's what's the difference between going 803 and going 735. It's all on the bike, and just the technology. If you adapt in terms of the bike technology, the bike itself, have you changed a lot in terms of what you're using?
Currently?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The bike I'm currently riding is head and shoulders better than what I even set on the course record back in 2011. And that's what you would expect. That was 10 years ago.
Right.
But I remember getting on that Specialized for the first time. It was like when I got on the Cervelo P4 at Vegas that year as well.
Yes.
You just felt the difference already. And it's just was a natural progression of knowing. And I think, Bob, you and I are old enough and have been around long enough to know that, back in the 70s and 80s, some of these ideas were around, like the soft ride bikes. They were considered to be more aerodynamic because they didn't have the seat tube. But the problem was, could we manufacture them to be strong enough? Same with the tri-spoke wheels. They've been around a long time, that technology, but they were too heavy. And I think the idea and the theory behind aerodynamics was always there. But what we learned sort of from 06, 07, 08 was how to manufacture the products with the carbon technology to make these products lighter and stronger. But yeah, the bike I'm currently riding, it's more comfortable, which as an elder statesman, you need comfort. But it's just lighter, it's more aerodynamic. And, you look at the adjustability and the way they design the cockpit now, the front end, they're so aero, but you can get so much adjustability as well. And I look now at a lot of I call it the praying mantis position, the bars coming up, and it's comfortable and aerodynamic. So we're able to mesh the two things. It's not doing one at the expense of the other. And yeah, the athletes are just so well versed in all of that stuff, and they've all got performance advisors. But yeah, I don't think you can really compare the equipment of today to 10 years ago, and certainly not even to 20 or 30 years ago, what, Tinley and Alan and Scott and Paula were using. I mean, the idea was there, the aero bars and the tri-spokes, but I just think where we are now with manufacturing and how strong and light the bikes are and aero, and they just look like rocket ships, don't they? You look at those new bikes and they look amazing. They really, standing on, I love to stand on the top of Pay and Save Hill, as they used to call it, Palani, the intersection of Palani and Queen Cam. So you see the athletes come out of the swim and come up there and then go down Palani and do the little loop through town. And then you see them climb up Palani and head out on the Queen K. And it's just a procession of excellence, man. They look so good. Yeah, so it's one of the big advancements, but it's what you'd expect. For me, the running shoes the last 2 or 3 years has been the huge, and you see it. You've seen it in marathon running with the times come down, the world records. Yeah, I mean, it's mind blowing, isn't it? It's mind blowing, but I guess it's not unexpected.
No, technology is technology, right? Eventually, it's going to hit everything. So, you're one of those guys like me who loves to race, and not being able to race much in 2020, I'm sure you were going out of your mind. Your wife and kids are probably like, "Get out of the house, go do something." So, with racing is starting to open up by you guys, you able to do some racing again?
Well, we had a big race last weekend down in Husky. And it doubled as the Aussie long course champs, and I love that race. Actually, that town, Neri and I had our honeymoon in that town 22 years ago now, and it's a beautiful spot. And I've got a lot of good history at that race. I've won the race 6 times actually, but I've been active, but I'm not on that level of fitness at the moment. I've been investing my time elsewhere the last 6 or 8 months with the Vespa team. Also, my coaching business, Senzigo. I've really, I've wanted to invest more time in it for 5 or 6 years now, but I felt I had an obligation to my partners, the companies I was a brand ambassador for, who supported me, many of them for a long time. And now I'm not racing at such a high level or as often anymore. I feel a huge obligation to sort of make myself more accessible to them. So a lot of my travel the last 6 or 7 years has been more promotional travel than actually racing. So mate, will I race here? I don't know. I'm still active. I mean, I went out for a 90-minute surf with my son yesterday.
Cool.
I'm doing a lot of the stuff that, and I talked about growing up as a soccer player, but watching the Hawaiian Ironman on television. One of the other events I used to love was the surf lifesaving Ironman racing, which is, for those people watching in the US, it was Baywatch, the surf lifesavers in Australia. They have very strong, they're world-class athletes. They have an amazing competition between themselves, and they have one race called the Coolangatta Gold, which is a 4-hour race. And I grew up watching that one as well. I used to love that. There was a guy 2 or 3 years above me at college who won that race, and he's actually the guy I'm nicknamed after. His name was Jonathan Crowe, so that's where the Crowe nickname came from. And he was the original Crowe, and if you ask him, he still thinks he was the best version of Crowe, and he was the first, that's for sure. But so I've been paddling a ski, and my son's into surf lifesaving. He's a young lifesaver, so I'm down at the beach a lot. So I'm active, but in other ways, I'm still running 2 or 3 times a week, mainly with my daughters. My 15-year-old daughter Lucy's her run group. I'm getting on the bike 3 or 4 times a week, mainly on the indoor trainer, because that's mainly what I have time for. It's very time effective. So I've become a Zwift addict. I'm on Zwift 4 or 5. I'm a serial pest on Zwift. I pop up every day. I mean, I'm still fine, mate. I will always exercise and be active. It's in my DNA. I love it. I love how it makes me feel. The competitor in me will always be there too. But I'm moving into other stages of life now. I mean, last year with the pandemic, Neri, she had to take on a full-time contract at work, being an emergency nurse. So she went from working 20 hours a week to 40 plus hours a week. So she was 6 days a week, some weeks seven days a week. They were always short-staffed, and she's always loved her job. And she said, can you pick up the slack on the home front? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, she supported my career wholeheartedly for a quarter of a century. So, and yeah, and I enjoyed being home. I enjoyed doing the homeschooling with the kids, although I'm glad classes went back when they did, because our homeschooling classes were getting shorter and shorter every day. But yeah, it's just a different stage of life. You know, I think racing used to check so many boxes for me because I loved the challenge. I loved the competitiveness. I loved the community, seeing everyone so often. And I can still check a lot of those boxes doing other things. That's not to say I won't race again, but I'll certainly need to knuckle down and do a lot more training than I'm currently doing. And we'll see if the opportunity presents. Yeah, I've talked about it with you. Challenge Roth is one race that I never did it. I never did it. Felix invited me every year. I always wanted to do it. You know, initially my plan was to try and have some good performances in Kona, and I was lucky straight out of the gate. I got a second and then a first. So I qualified for life, I thought, in Kona. So then my plan was, you know, even though I'm getting older, I can still do 2 Ironmans in a year. So I wanted to do Roth and then Kona. But obviously the
rules.
the rules changed around qualification, and I had to validate. And I just, at that age of 37, 38, 39, I didn't think I could do 3 Ironmans in the year. Physically, mentally, I didn't want to do it. I had a young family, so I never got to wear those. What are those little overalls they wear? The leather overalls.
Yes.
I want to get in a pair of those little leather overalls. I want to be drinking beer out of that
2 nights before. Yeah. And
I want to be doing that. Yeah, absolutely. It just,
bring
everyone
your
who's
kids,
raced.
do
Yeah,
it as a relay.
I would love to.
Yeah, right. You guys could do that. You and your kids could do that as a relay. Felix would love that.
Yeah, I would love to just experience. Everyone I've ever spoken to has raced there says it's one of the best experiences of their professional life, the way they get treated, the stadium, the crowd. So I don't have many regrets in my career, but not racing there has been one of them for sure.
If you did it as a relay and you do the bike, because that you want to go up Solar Hill, right?
Yeah.
Let the kids do the swim and the run. You know, you've done enough marathons. You don't need to be doing that.
maybe I'll let Cam Worth do most of the bike, and I'll just switch out at the bottom of the hill, so I get the hill.
Exactly. Felix would let you relay any way you wanted to. That would be awesome. That is great. Crowy, congrats on the team, the Vespa Tri Team. That's so cool. I love it when there's new people coming into our sport, and every one of these athletes is not just a first class athlete, but just a first class person. You've really done a nice job selecting great athletes and people.
Hey man, thank you. I've always appreciated your support, and yeah, perfect place for us to launch the Vespa Pro Team. To everyone out there, look out for the guys and girls racing in Miami and the rest of the team announcement. I mean, I'm just so excited. We have a roster of world-class athletes, and should be an exciting couple of years.
It's going to be great. And I'm sure they'll put a relay team together with Mr. Craig Alexander on there for one of these events.
Who knows? Maybe my role can be in the corporate box. We'll see.
There you go. A little cheering in the box. I like it.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Give the best to Neri and the kids. Thanks so much for taking time.
My pleasure, Bob. Thank you. Thanks as always, mate.
Craig Alexander, 3-time Ironman World Champion, 2-time Ironman 70.3 World Champion. More importantly, an ambassador and spokesperson for the Vespa Tri Team. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. We'll catch you next time.